Welcome to the Breakfast Leadership Show, where we interview global thought leaders on business, leadership, and life. Here's your host, keynote speaker, best-selling author, and chief burnout officer of the Breakfast Leadership Network, Michael Levitt.
Welcome back. I've got Brian Lundberg online. Brian, how are you?
I'm doing well today, Michael, and you?
I'm doing really well. Really looking forward to this conversation. So we connected a little while ago and really wanted to have you on my show because you speak about finances and investing and things like that from a slightly different perspective, which I think is desperately needed in these times. So why don't you share a little bit about you, and then we'll dive into this conversation.
Well, I appreciate you having me on your show, Michael, and the work that you do with your clients. I've been in the investment management space and finance space for the better part of 30 years. And so there's not much I haven't seen either personally or walked through with my clients professionally. And so I have a practice here in San Diego with Edward Jones. Our firm's 100 years old as of this past year. And we presently serve over 8 million households on a monthly basis with about $2.3 trillion in assets under management. And when I speak with my clients, I tell them I kind of act like their financial GPS system. And I'm going to help them get to where they want to go, when they want to be there, and with the resources that they need. And I champion them along the way to make sure that it's as smooth a flight as possible. So we really like to do life with our clients and take all the stress and anxiety out of investing for them. And really my number one goal is to create peace of mind for my clients. And so that's what we do on a day in, day out basis. And we're honored and privileged to serve a fairly substantial Rolodex of clientele.
It's amazing work that Edward Jones has done over the last century and, ongoing. And, in your 30 plus years of seeing the markets and investing and all of that stuff, you used a phrase before we started, there's nothing new under the sun. And it's true. The markets, over the last few years have been just, steep incline for many industries and much like a roller coaster, but we all know what happens with a roller coaster. It goes up and then it can go down. And especially if it's that first drop, boy, that one hurts. You're not prepared for it, especially if it's the first roller coaster of your day. You get used to it afterwards. But in investing, it's a little bit different. And, what we're seeing in the markets now at the time of this recording, there's all of these uncertainties in the world, and nothing makes an investor more grumpy than uncertainty, because they're freaking out about things. And, me, I lean back on, and I forget where I saw this. It might have actually, I think the first time I saw this was in an economics class in college back in the late 80s and early 90s, where they were going through the stock market and teaching people on all of that good stuff, and they said, well, at that particular time, that was shortly after October 19th, 1987. Probably a day you remember. I remember October 19th is my dad's birthday, and he used to boast about that. He's like, yeah, my birthday, what happens? The market crashes. Great. He was kind of sarcastic that way, but I remember that. And, I had this college course, I think a few months later, and they said, look, let's take a look at the history of the New York Stock Exchange. And they mapped it out over, that point in time, a number of years. So do you notice something? Yes, there's drops, but if you stretch it out, it has this incline. And that's what it's a case of. You have to know, and this was a conversation I had on a podcast interview earlier today. You have to know your why, as an investor. And a lot of people don't. They say, I just want to invest. I want to, I want to get stock in Tesla, or I want to get stock in this. And before we continue, this is not financial advice, by the way, anybody. It's like you seek your own advice. We're not giving financial advice. We're giving financial information. So if you go and you go buy a stock and it tanks tomorrow, it's not on us. Okay. Leave us out of that. So, but at the end of the day, understanding your why as an investor, I think I know it's a question that you and your team ask. And I'm guessing there's a lot of people that when they first enter your office, they don't know. They really don't.
Yeah.
They're oblivious to what investing is about and how they want to invest. All they want to think about is, well, I want to have enough to retire, or I want to have this. Okay, well, that's part of your why, but why? And I think I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, that's a really profound question. We do center around discovering what's the most important to our clientele. We have a number of tools that we use to help dig some of that out, because oftentimes our why is actually residing more in our subconscious thinking that we haven't really taken the time to articulate yet. And that presents a dangerous problem, because you're kind of scattered and shooting in the wind, as you will, to hit your goal. So we dig that out, and then we lay out a map and a plan for that. But one of the questions I ask my clients when they come in, I say, hey, when you're laying on your deathbed, when you're looking back over the course of your life, what do you want to say? And most people have no answer. And I said, well, there's a couple things I don't think you will say. One is, gee, I wish I'd have spent more time in the office. The other may be, I wish I'd have, won, at the game more, have more toys or whatever. I said, the only thing you may be saying, and I leave this open to them, but I try to help guide the conversation. I said, you're going to say, I wish I'd have taken more risks in relationships with family, maybe even tried to start a business. Wish I wouldn't have been maybe so consumed with chasing the almighty dollar. Now, listen, I'm all about let's make money, let's take territory, let's expand our sphere of influence without question, but there's strategic ways to do that, and then there's some haphazard ways. So those are some of the things that we uncover with our clients and then help map out. Back to your question, Michael, is why are you doing that? And most of the time they're just saying, well, it's because what we've always done, or that's what I think we're supposed to do. And it's ironic. I was recently speaking at an event where I talked on the two things they don't teach you in school, but they absolutely should. One of them is how to have successful relationships, and the other one's how to manage your money. So as soon as we get out of school, we do the two things they don't equip us with, which is we start making money, and then we get into a relationship. And we know that for most divorces, at least half of them, it's centered around the differences or the struggle with finances. And so the two things we're least equipped to do are the two things we do for the vast majority of our life. So I deal with that almost like a financial physician on the other end of the line of seeing where that hasn't been properly cared for or stewarded, and it's creating tension and conflict, or maybe in some cases it comes in, I'm talking to people who have had, marriages that didn't work out the way they'd hoped, obviously. So one of the things we try to highlight back to our clientele is, hey, let's get that why nailed down, and then let's get some realistic expectations. And let's talk about what's driving some of these, what I call almost impulse investment buys, because I've had clients successfully turn $1 million into $600,000 while the market's going up. And so not a really good formula for success. And certainly they end up, quite disgusted with themselves, and they can get into a negative spiral over that, because that's a big delta to make up. So we work with them and get them educated on, the plan and show it to them visually, which helps people immensely. Sometimes to visualize what that plan looks like takes a lot of the stress and concern out and allows you to stay on your long-term investment plan, knowing that you're going to get to where you want to go. So we have a lot of discussions. We're not just kind of, hey, we're going to get your money invested and let's talk in a year. It's, no, we're going to do life together when things come up, and make sure that you're equipped, both financially, but also emotionally, if you will, on how to handle that success, how to navigate not blowing things up that are going well, and how to take strategic risks, and what does that look like. So,
yeah, it's important, because I see, and especially with the advent of easier investment in the online apps, and a lot of people started investing over the last few years, and they, much like the analogy you said with schools not teaching us, they didn't know what they were doing, so they were going on Reddit or Twitter or wherever else and getting their stock tips that way, and like you said, taking $1 million and turning it into 600,000, and this is where the addiction type of personality, if you are prone for that, can get you in real trouble. Just like what we see in the casinos or gambling is, well, I'll make it up. I'm going to hit the next one. I'm going to get the next right. All that, they get that mentality instead of stopping and going, okay, why did that happen? And what did I do? You know, you got to take ownership in this. Okay, what did I do wrong, or what did I miscalculate here on this investment? Yes, there's external factors. You know, the company decides to announce that they're closing a bunch of stores and no one knew about it. Okay, yeah, that's going to happen. But if you're investing, you know, there's long-term thinking and short-term, but then there's also investors versus traders. And I think everybody that was signing up on these apps got caught into this trading mentality and not an investing mentality. And much like the casinos, you may not do really well if you go into that mindset of typing or basically trying to trade instead of properly invest. And I'm sure you encounter that quite a bit with people.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great highlight and distinction of what happens oftentimes is that people come in and they want my professional advice, but applying it to being a trader. And so that's one of the first areas I have to kind of help them unlearn a few things. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with trading, but I can tell you that I've not met anybody that's become wealthy by trading. And so there are people that definitely have done very well in that, but I've not come across them. And I always tell my clients, I said, usually they're getting their investment advice from a stock tip from a buddy or something they read or heard, and then they make one of the classic mistakes, which is they put too many eggs or all their eggs in that one basket. And when they get, and I've done that before in my earlier years, not all of my eggs, but too many that I didn't like it when it didn't go the right way. So I've learned by experience. I have some of those battle scars, so I know emotionally kind of what goes into that thinking, and that's a lot of what prompted me to get into this space in the first place and make it my profession after years outside of the industry. And so one of the things we like to help our clients understand is where we help you invest for the long run. That's been the bedrock of our organization for 100 years. That's why I chose Edward Jones versus other platforms that let you do options trading, futures, and all these much more high leverage, risky endeavors where you're doing it on your own with no advice. And even if you are doing it with advice, those traders, bear in mind, I learned this lesson the tough way as I was listening to somebody who was wildly successful. They were a 9-figure individual in terms of net worth. So, not quite at the billionaire status. And I jumped in on investments with what they were doing, not realizing for them that's like throwing $20 down the drain. I just figured, of course, it was going to work out because they're invested in it, they're smart, they know about this space, and promptly lost half of that investment. So those are things that I see happening all too often. And so you have to be cautious who you're taking advice from. Very much turn off the media. That generally never, ever works out well for clients. At least in my experience. And going back again, it goes back to what you said, Michael. What is your why? Why do you want this financial freedom? Why do you want to make whatever that dollar amount is? And if you can ascertain what that why is and even put a number to it, we can build a plan that will get you there probably faster than what you would think. But it is that classic tortoise versus the hare syndrome. And, if you'll just be the tortoise, you're going to win. I can guarantee you. And so I used to tell my clients back in the day, I said, look, that show, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, for those of us old enough to remember that, was the #1 rated show at the time because everybody wants to be a millionaire. The challenge is very few people have the discipline to become one. But everybody in America can become a multimillionaire if you'll start investing and stay disciplined over the course of your working career. There's no reason why you can't. I can show it to you mathematically 6 ways from Sunday. But the question is will you be able to maintain that discipline? And that's really the value of partnering with somebody like myself or another financial individual who can take the emotion out of your investing, or your money management might be a better way to say it. And if you'll lean on and humble yourself to kind of come under somebody else's tutelage, you will retire and you will hit those financial goals that you have in mind. Really regardless of what happens in the market or other factors. So, my encouragement to your audience today is, seek out professional advice just like you do in every other area. Seek that out in your monetary, your investments, and come and get help. It's a lot less costly than some of the mistakes you're likely to make.
It's words to live by. And it's, again, the emotion side of things. You flip on, one of the financial news channels and, they start talking about something, you start panicking and you're selling your stock off early, or you're going in and you're buying all this stuff and you realize, okay, wow, this didn't do it, or crypto or anything like that. It's all that. So when you encounter a client like that, how do you get their emotions kind of in check?
Yeah, good question. So I like to have them articulate what they hope to gain out of that, and if they have, especially if they're trying to do some trading, when are you going to get out? Why did you pick that number? How much of your net worth is tied up in this one investment? That's always an interesting one because that shows you the emotional entanglement they have. And then, how long will it take you to replace that income if it doesn't go your way? They never think about the downside. And so they only think about when it wins, and we're all optimistic probably if we're in the investment world. But you do have to plan. I do a lot of risk mitigation. And, if you lose 50% of your investment value, that means you have to double just to get to break even. So that can take you a long time to get back to that level. So usually what happens is then they double down, kind of like in Vegas. I'm down, I'm going to double down because then I can win it back quicker. And you just dig a deeper hole. So good to follow that ancient proverb: when you're in a hole, stop digging, and probably seek out some help. So I talk to them about the two things, and this is Warren Buffett's famous line: when people get nervous, he gets greedy, and when people get greedy, he gets nervous. And so he's a contrarian that way. And so when the market's like right now, people are getting panicky, he's starting to get greedy. And that's when, the people that are really wealthy buy in the midst of panic and fear. And so, but most of us aren't disciplined to do that. And even people that are paying me, I've actually had to tell clients, either stop paying me or start taking my advice, one or the other. If you're not going to pay my advice, you should stop paying me. And so a lot of advisors won't tell people that, but I'm like, I can't in good conscience let you continue to pay me and not take my advice, because it's going to not work out for you. So that's where I try to help center them on to understand your emotions are natural that you're having, but sometimes we have to do the opposite of what our emotions are telling us. And here's why. So I try to first acknowledge the emotional state they're in, and then I try to get an analytical backup to show them why they can go against their emotional leanings. And here's what's happened historically. And in this case, our firm has 100 years of that data on hand to show them. So, but I think it's important to sequence, though, Michael, and you know this well from the work you do. If you don't hit and resonate with them on that emotional level first, they'll never hear you on the analytical. So that's a lot of what I do. I'll just call it financial counseling, honestly, and getting people to understand that dynamic. And then once they start connecting the dots, things go amazingly well. And I'll get clients, or not clients, but friends or others in my community to say, hey, it must have been a really busy time last year when the market was cratering so much. And I said, it was actually very quiet. Because if I've done my job properly, people aren't calling me panicking. The only time they call is to say, I've got more money than maybe what I told you, let's invest. So that's one of the gauges where I know if I'm doing my job well and if I'm communicating well with my clients is during the downtimes, they're not panicking, calling, and freaking out. And they know that we have a regular rhythm cycle and we'll be talking. And if they need something in the meantime, they call. So that's one of the things I try to set in the early stages of the relationship I build with my clientele is let's set our expectations of what to expect and how we want to operate so we have a successful journey together.
It's when you said financial counselor, I was thinking in my head, it's like you're a financial therapist. You're helping them get their mental emotions straight, because people become millionaires, but that's okay. What's in their bank account, but it takes a different mindset to be a millionaire, not to as much as to get to one. Jim Rohn and Brian Tracy have talked about this, at length, but the person you have to become in order to do that, is some work that you have to do. And that's one area that unfortunately a lot of people try to shy away from, is that internal work, because they're we are our own worst judge sometimes. But as I tell people, it's like when you're starting to do that work within and you're looking within, whether it's why is this important to me? Why do I want to invest in this? You approach it from a childlike curiosity instead of a judgmental, angry, adult type of thing. You approach it like when you were a little kid and you were learning how to do things the first time. You're like, why does it work this way? And if you approach your life when you're looking in that way, it leaves some cues and some clues, and it's a better way to approach things. And you won't beat yourself up as much when you do that. And in the long run, you'll be better for it.
Yeah. Well, that's well said. I like that. And there's that show about Ted Lasso, and he has a line in that show. He says, "Be curious, not judgmental." And he goes, "If you'd have been curious about me, here's what you would have learned." And they were playing this game of darts, and the other guy thought he would win because he wasn't curious about this guy. So I like that analogy. I think that works well. And also one of the things that we try to help our clients understand, I think it's important for your audience to understand, is obviously in addition to the why, is to realize that I've had clients that, their spouse has been on the deathbed, in hospice, and they have more than once said, I would give back all these millions if I could have them back. And so two things along the journey we try to help people with as a therapist is also, it's very holistic. In other words, many people spend a lot of their career chasing the money to get to the financial freedom, and they do it at the expense of their marriage, their relationship with their kids, or their personal health. And so once they get all their wealth, they turn around and spend it all to get their health back, or they're paying for it through a broken relationship. And so we try to help people navigate before they ever get there. That's the benefit of having a plan. It's like, hey, you're going to get there, so you don't need to burn everybody out on the journey too. We need to enjoy it. Nobody's promised tomorrow, so we want to make sure we're fully engaged and present today, and doing the things that will lead to success tomorrow, but not haphazardly walking out in some foolish traps that are pretty easy to avoid. If you'll get counsel, right? There's a proverb that says, in a multitude of counsel, there's wisdom. So that's another reason why hiring professional help wherever you need it in any specific area is going to be far less costly in the long run, and really add to and help you get to where you want to go, and kind of pull out that gold that's in your heart to resonate and live with and share with your family, friends, and community. So, money is a very interesting tool I found over the years. One of the questions I'll ask my clients, I'll just say, finish my statement. And I'll say, money is. And so if your audience would just answer, money is, once you plug in whatever your answer is, there's no right or wrong. But once that comes into play, start noticing what you said and start see how that's shaping your actions. And is that serving you well or not? And so one of the things I tell my clients is money's a tool. And how you use it, it can be very, very powerful. So we try to help them understand what is their relationship to money, and then how are they using it in a proper fashion to serve what their goals and aims are. And sometimes they find out that they've had a wrong view, and we just help them work through their thinking on that. And it's quite liberating. And all of a sudden they get more satisfaction at work. They start making better decisions on the investment side. Their anxiety levels go down. They literally start sleeping better at night, especially in difficult times that we've experienced in the last year. So, again, it goes back to that question that you started us off with, what's your why? And nobody really talks a lot about it other than in fleet passing, but then we get caught up in the busyness of life, and we forget to really camp there for a little bit.
Important lessons for us all. So, Brian, love this conversation. Where can people find out more about you and this amazing work you're doing?
Yeah, well, thank you so much. They can find me Brian.Lundberg at edwardjones.com. So Brian Lundberg at edwardjones.com, or they can reach out directly to my office line, which is 760-752-9733. Again, 760-752-9733. They can schedule a time to have a complimentary consultation to see if we're a good fit to partner together. Always welcome meeting new friends, and appreciate your time on the show today, Michael.
I'll definitely have that in the show notes. So Brian, thank you again for your time today and all this important work you're doing. It's really important to all of us. So thanks again for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Michael.
Thanks for listening to the Breakfast Leadership Show, part of the Breakfast Leadership Network. Visit breakfastleadership.com for tips on empowering your business and your life.